You move in with him, then I move on without you.
There's a peculiar quiet that takes hold of a home once everything has collapsed. It isn't the tranquil hush people associate with rest or calm. It is heavier, sharper, a silence that feels as though it has been scraped raw from the wreckage of chaos, a silence that forces you to sit still and confront the jagged edges of what remains. That is the sound I live with now. For me, the chaos had been a 4-year relationship with Jessica. The wreckage was not just the absence of her presence, but the shattering of every plan, every shared dream, every illusion of permanence we thought we had been shaping together. Yet, strangely, as I sit with this silence, I have begun to recognize something vital. The destruction did not erode the ground beneath me. My foundation is still intact. What crumbled was a structure already weakened, already rotting quietly in the beams and walls long before it finally gave way. I've never thought of myself as someone easily duped. My profession has conditioned me otherwise. As a data engineer, I spend my days dissecting systems, tracing delicate networks, predicting where cracks will form before they become catastrophic. I understand how a single corrupted line of code, one invisible error, can dismantle an entire structure. I carried that same discipline into my personal life. It is why I often felt detached when men around me complained about girlfriends who drained their savings or ignored their needs. Their miscalculations seemed obvious to me. With Jessica, however, it all felt different. Ours was not an impulsive bond. It looked from every angle as though it had been built on sturdy ground, on shared ambitions, on mutual investment, on the steady rhythm of two people working towards something larger than themselves. From the moment I met her, Jessica radiated intelligence and determination. She carried with her a 5-year map of her future, and I admired the way she seemed to know not just what she wanted, but how she intended to get there. We didn't behave like two people drifting in romance. We behaved like partners embarking on an enterprise. We opened a savings account together for a house down payment. Because I earned more, my contribution was larger, but hers was real and consistent. We discussed every major decision, debating options until we landed on what felt right for both of us. Piece by piece, brick by brick, we were constructing a future that felt deliberate, rational, and promising. I respected her because she matched my seriousness. I loved her because she treated our life like something worth building, not just something to enjoy while it lasted. But in the carefully balanced equation of our relationship, there was one variable I could never properly measure. Her closest friend, Ryan Mitchell. Ryan was the embodiment of instability wrapped in expensive clothing. He was perpetually perched on the edge of his next big break, dabbling in entrepreneurial schemes that shifted like smoke every few months. One season, it was a tech startup. The next, some vague real estate plan, followed by yet another venture that promised millions and delivered nothing. His life was a carousel of reinventions, none of them grounded in reality. Ryan wore designer clothes that were clearly beyond his means. He drove a leased BMW, always a few payments behind, flashing it as though it were proof of his success. He carried himself with a self-assured swagger that could only come from someone who had never actually been cornered by the consequences of his own recklessness. And he was always around, lounging in our living room, dispensing unsolicited advice on how we should manage our money, how we should handle our relationship, slipping in barbed comments that mocked me while remaining just vague enough that Jessica could dismiss them as jokes. And she always defended him. Always. Whenever I voiced concern, her tone turned sharp with irritation. "He's like a brother to me," she would insist, almost rehearsed. "He just doesn't have your stability, David. He doesn't have your financial footing." She would say it as though it were a compliment, but all it ever did was remind me that I was her foundation. I was the paycheck, the planner, the anchor she clung to when the seas got rough. I was not just her partner. I was her safety net, her insurance policy, her guarantee that someone would catch her if she fell. And then, one Thursday evening, she decided to test just how much weight I could carry before breaking. She walked in the door buzzing with a strange, artificial brightness. Her voice was pitched a little too high, her steps too quick, her smile a little too eager. There was a restless energy about her, as though she were holding on to a secret she could no longer contain. She asked me to sit on the sofa, the one we had agonized over together in a furniture showroom, 3 Saturdays spent testing cushions and comparing fabrics. I sat, still unsuspecting, and she stood before me, ready to detonate. "I've got incredible news," she announced, her words landing with the force of a verdict rather than the opening of a conversation. "Ryan's roommate is moving out next month. I'm taking his place." For a moment, I simply stared at her, waiting for the grin, the laugh, the sheepish, "Just kidding." None came. She rushed ahead, the words tumbling out in a breathless flood as though speed would soften their weight. Think about it, David. This is purely financial. His rent is so much lower than what I'm paying here. I'd be saving $1,000 every month minimum. We'd reach our house goal twice as fast. It's perfect. It really is the perfect solution. That's what she called it, the perfect solution. I let the silence thicken between us, stretching it until it became its own presence in the room. She had walked in craving a fight, itching for sparks and shouting so she could twist my reaction into proof that I was possessive, controlling, jealous. But I wasn't about to grant her that weapon. I refused to hand her the ammunition she wanted so badly. Instead, I did what I always do best. I analyzed. I sifted through 1,000 possibilities in the span of seconds, running simulations in my head the way I would debug a fragile system on the brink of failure. Every potential outcome played across my mind, and from that noise, one clear path emerged. My answer wasn't anger, nor pleading, nor confusion. It was control. I smiled, calm, steady, genuine, a smile that conveyed serenity instead of rage. "Jessica," I said evenly, my tone measured and smooth. "That actually works out perfectly." The effect was instant and delicious. The triumphant gleam in her eyes, that battle-ready spark she had been sharpening all afternoon, collapsed into something rawer, pure bewilderment. Her victory pose faltered, leaving her caught mid-step in a dance she hadn't rehearsed. "It does?" she stammered, her certainty draining away. "Absolutely," I continued, relaxing into the couch. "It's brilliant financial planning, sacrificing comfort now for bigger returns later. That's exactly the thinking that makes me proud of you." Now she was totally off balance. She'd anticipated a storm, but received clear skies instead. She spent the evening excitedly discussing how much she'd contribute to our house fund, how wonderful living with Ryan would be, and how mature we were handling everything. I nodded supportively, adding encouraging remarks throughout. I was the perfect understanding partner. Later that night, while she chatted with Ryan on the phone about apartment details, laughing and planning, I waited. I let her finish her call and bask in her apparent success. I let her enjoy the glow of her apparent victory. Then I entered the living room and sat across from her. "I've been considering what you said," I began seriously. "And you've motivated me. Since you're making this major move to boost our savings, I think it's only fair that I do the same." She looked wary. Something in my tone had shifted. "What do you mean?" "Well," I said, leaning forward, "I've had this opportunity available for weeks. A significant project through our company's London office. 2-year contract. The compensation is exceptional, plus a huge completion bonus. I was going to decline because I didn't want to abandon what we're building. But with you moving out to save money, it makes total sense. I can store my belongings, live cheaply there, and put my entire salary plus bonus toward our goal. When I return, we'll have enough to buy our dream house outright." Her jaw dropped slowly. I watched the gears turning in her head, panic creeping into her eyes. You took a position in London?" "I called and accepted tonight," I said, lying as smoothly as I'd ever told the truth. "They're sending final paperwork tomorrow. The project begins in 3 weeks. Actually, I'm terminating our lease at month's end. The timing couldn't be better, right?" Color drained from her face completely. "You ended the lease? But where will I stay when I visit?" "Visit? Jessica, the whole point is saving money. London flights are expensive. We need discipline from both of us. This is what you wanted. Smart financial decisions." Then I delivered the finishing blow. "Since we'll be managing finances separately for 2 years, we need to divide our shared assets now. It's the only logical approach. I've already prepared a spreadsheet of our joint account, furniture, everything we've accumulated. We need to determine who gets what." She stared speechlessly. The brilliant scheme she'd hatched with Ryan, where she'd live with him while keeping me and my income as backup, had just evaporated. She thought she was making a simple move. She had no idea she'd triggered a complete system failure. The look in her eyes wasn't confusion anymore. It was pure terror. She started packing that night, but not with her previous cheerful excitement. She packed through tears. 2 weeks have passed since I dismantled our future. The aftermath has been exactly as predicted, only more satisfying than I could have imagined. Thanks for all the support and messages from everyone. It's reassuring to know logical thinking still has value in this chaotic world we live in. The next day was a masterclass in backpedaling. Jessica woke with swollen red eyes and immediately tried canceling her plan completely. I wasn't thinking clearly, she said, forcing laughter that sounded hollow. Moving in with Ryan is ridiculous. I don't want that. And you shouldn't go to London. We're stronger together. We work better as a team. I shook my head with deep, sincere regret. I can't, Jessica. I've already signed the contract. If I withdraw now, I'll be blacklisted at my company. My career would be finished. You know I can't risk that. You know how important my work is to me. I'd sign nothing, of course. The contract was a PDF I'd spent 2 hours creating myself, complete with official letterhead copied from our company's website. But she didn't know that. She had no way of knowing that. Besides, I continued, using her own arguments against her, you were right. This is smart financial planning. We must think long-term. A few years apart is a small price for lifetime security. Every argument she attempted, I countered with her original reasoning. She wanted to save money. This was optimal. She wanted our house faster. This guaranteed it. She'd set the trap. I was merely holding the door open for her. Dividing our assets was brutal for her to experience. Our shared savings turned out to be roughly 90% my contributions. When I transferred her portion, the exact amount she'd deposited over the years, to her personal account, she was shocked by how small the number was. But what about all the interest? She asked, voice trembling with disbelief. That's allocated proportionally to initial investments, I said calmly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Furniture was another battle entirely. She started pointing at items around our apartment. The sofa, dining table, television, coffee table. We can sell these and split the proceeds, she said desperately. I produced another spreadsheet with receipts attached. I purchased the sofa and television before we even met, I explained patiently. The dining table I bought myself as a housewarming gift when we moved in together. They're not shared assets. They were never shared assets. By day's end, she was left with her clothes, some kitchen items, and minimal cash. The life she'd taken for granted was revealed to be a life I'd almost entirely funded. The comfortable existence she'd assumed was ours was actually mine, extended to her as a courtesy. She moved in with Ryan exactly a week ago. Initially, my phone stayed completely silent. I think she was trying to project success, pretending she'd made the right choice. She posted several social media photos of her and Ryan drinking wine in their new place, with captions like "fresh starts" and "excited for this new chapter," and other generic optimistic phrases. Then, the calls began to come in. First, it was about the car. The vehicle she'd been driving was registered to me. I'd been paying the insurance and maintenance costs. I called to inform her that since I was moving to London, I was selling the car and canceling the policy. She'd need to find her own transportation immediately. The panic in her voice was genuine and unmistakable. But how will I get to work? David, you can't do this to me. It's a financial decision, Jessica, I said sympathetically. I can't afford payments on a car I won't use for 2 years. That would be fiscally irresponsible. Next came the phone bill situation. She was on my family plan, had been for years. I informed her she'd be removed at the billing cycle's end. Then it was streaming services, gym membership, all the financial threads connecting her to my income and lifestyle. One by one, I severed them all methodically. Ryan, predictably, has been a complete disaster. I've been receiving texts from him regularly. Initially, they were arrogant. Dude, you really screwed up badly. Jessica is incredible. Your loss, man. I didn't respond to any of them. Then they became annoyed and demanding. Hey, Jessica's short on rent this month. You need to send money. Don't be an idiot about this. I didn't respond to those either. His latest message, sent late last night, was pure desperation. David, you need to call me immediately. The landlord's threatening eviction. Jessica cries constantly. You created this entire mess. You need to fix it now. They genuinely believe this is my responsibility. They believe I'm obligated to resolve the situation they created through their own poor planning. Their arrogance matches their stupidity perfectly. They thought they could outsmart a data engineer. They failed to understand that I don't just see systems, I know how to destroy them completely. I haven't moved to London, obviously. I've relocated to a new apartment across town instead. It's smaller but completely mine. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every monthly bill. Our old lease officially ends this week. Jessica and Ryan think I'm packing for an international flight. In reality, I'm just unpacking boxes containing my new peaceful life. They have no idea where I am. They have no idea I'm not thousands of miles away, but across the city, watching their poorly designed plan crumble to dust. And the best part? I'm just getting started with this. A full month has passed now. The initial shockwave has subsided, and I'm now observing the aftershocks rippling through their lives. The story has taken turns even I didn't fully anticipate when I started this process. My plan was simply to extract myself cleanly and let their poor planning cause their inevitable downfall. But when you build your life on lies and deception, the collapse is more spectacular than anyone could imagine. After a week of increasingly frantic texts from Ryan, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Jessica's mother calling me. I'd always maintained a cordial relationship with her parents throughout our 4 years together. They seemed like decent people with solid values. I was wrong about them. Her mother didn't bother with pleasantries or small talk. She launched into a vicious rant about how I had abandoned her daughter, left her stranded and destitute without any support system. She called me cruel and heartless and selfish. I let her finish completely, waiting for her anger to burn itself out. When she paused for breath, I spoke calmly and evenly. With all due respect, Jessica made an independent financial decision to move in with another man. I've simply made some financial decisions of my own in response. She's your girlfriend. You have a responsibility to care for her, she screamed into the phone. Actually, I said, I don't think she's my girlfriend anymore. And I'd asked Jessica about her responsibilities to me and our shared goals before you lecture me about mine. That conversation was the opening salvo in a new campaign, the guilt and shame offensive designed to make me the villain. Suddenly, mutual friends started calling me out of nowhere. They'd heard a heavily edited version from Jessica, a story where I'd had a sudden mental breakdown, became controlling and vindictive, and punished her for trying to be financially responsible. This was a variable I'd anticipated months earlier. When my suspicions about Jessica and Ryan first solidified several months ago, I'd started my real investigative work. I'm a data engineer, remember? I analyze information and find patterns that others miss. I'd installed monitoring software on our home network, not to spy on personal emails, but to track data traffic patterns and usage. I noticed her laptop and phone usage spiked dramatically during late nights, all directed toward social media and messaging apps when she claimed to be working on projects. I also noticed that our shared online grocery orders paid from our joint account often included expensive items I never saw in our apartment. Premium liquor, expensive steaks, gourmet cheeses, luxury items that never made it to our table. The final puzzle piece fell into place when I ran a comprehensive background check. Not on her, but on Ryan specifically. His financial situation was far worse than I'd imagined in my worst-case scenarios. He had 2 prior evictions on his record and numerous unpaid debts to various creditors. The apartment owner was a small independent landlord, not a large corporation, someone much more likely to act swiftly against non-paying tenants. I'd compiled everything meticulously. Data logs, grocery receipts, copies of Ryan's public eviction records, all organized in a neat digital folder. My insurance policy against exactly this situation. When the first mutual friend called to tell me what a terrible person I was, I didn't argue or defend myself. I simply said, I think you've only heard one side of the story. Let me send you an email with some additional context. I sent them a link to a password-protected web page I'd built specifically for this purpose, laying out the entire timeline unemotionally with comprehensive evidence. I included screenshots of grocery orders showing items clearly not for our household, public records of Ryan's financial instability, and the most damning evidence: transcripts from our home security system's audio recordings. The security system recorded audio whenever it was armed or disarmed for safety purposes. I'd captured several conversations between Jessica and Ryan from times when they thought I was asleep or at work. The conversations were absolutely sickening to listen to. They'd been planning this elaborate scheme for months. It wasn't just about saving money. It was a deliberate, calculated plan to manipulate me. The plan was for Jessica to move in with Ryan while I continued funding her entire lifestyle, car payments, phone bill, spending money, everything, under the guise of our continuing relationship. She'd then use that money supporting Ryan financially, preventing his eviction while he attempted to launch his new business venture. They laughed about how trusting and naive I was, how I was the perfect long-term investment for their future. They literally called me their retirement plan in these recordings. I sent this comprehensive link to every single person who contacted me on her behalf. The calls stopped abruptly. The smear campaign died before it could even begin properly. I hadn't just countered her narrative. I'd completely obliterated it with cold, hard, undeniable facts. The best part was receiving a call from her father. He was a proud man who valued his reputation, and I could hear the deep humiliation in his voice. He'd clearly seen all the evidence I'd compiled. He didn't yell or threaten. He just said quietly, "I'd like to arrange pickup of Jessica's remaining things from your new address." He'd somehow gotten my new address through his own investigation. It didn't matter to me. I told him I'd leave the boxes in the building's loading dock on a specific day and time. He agreed without argument. He then asked the question I knew was inevitably coming. The car situation. She needs it for work. Could she just take over the payments? The car's already been sold, I said matter-of-factly. Another lie, of course. The car was sitting safely in my new secure parking garage. It was a sound financial decision given my circumstances. The long silence on the line was my complete victory. He knew he had no leverage whatsoever. He knew his daughter had been caught red-handed in a scheme so foolish and greedy that defending it was absolutely impossible. Jessica and Ryan are now facing the full consequences of their actions. Their landlord, who may or may not have received an anonymous tip regarding his tenant's financial history and his new roommate's precarious income situation, has started formal eviction proceedings against them. Jessica is now completely unemployed. Her company, a small firm where reputation and trust are everything, let her go after rumors of her unethical planning started to circulate widely. It seems one of our mutual friends works in the same industry and word travels fast. They're trapped in an apartment they can't afford with no allies left to call for help. They thought they were masterminds playing chess. They were just amateurs who picked the wrong target entirely. They tried manipulating a system without understanding that I'm the one who builds and maintains systems professionally. And I always build in multiple failsafes. 6 months have passed since my old life ended and my new one began. The dust has completely settled now. Their silence is absolute and permanent. The story is finally over. And I can definitively say I won not just the battle, but the entire war. And I did it without ever raising my voice or losing my temper once. The eviction I mentioned in my previous update went through exactly as predicted. Jessica and Ryan were forced from their apartment with nowhere else to go. The image of them trying to move their belongings without a car, a detail I heard from a former mutual friend, is a source of quiet satisfaction for me. Their brilliant plan, hatched over months of whispered phone calls and secret meetings, ended with them standing curbside surrounded by boxes they couldn't afford to move to anywhere. Ryan, exactly as I predicted, folded completely under the financial pressure. He blamed Jessica for everything, for bringing her drama into his life and for getting him kicked out of his apartment. Their great friendship, the one that was supposedly like family, dissolved instantly the moment money ran out and reality hit. He moved back to his hometown to live with his parents, a 30-year-old man utterly defeated by his own arrogance and stupidity. Jessica's fall was much harder and more complete than his. After losing both her job and apartment, she had no choice but to move back in with her parents like a teenager. But the home she returned to wasn't the supportive sanctuary she'd expected it to be. Her father, a man who valued reputation above absolutely everything else, was deeply ashamed of her actions. He'd seen all the evidence I'd compiled. He knew the complete truth. He and her mother were providing basic shelter, but the warmth and support were completely gone. She was a disgrace to their family name, and they treated her accordingly. I learned through the grapevine that she's struggled finding any new work in her field. The industry she was in is surprisingly small, and word travels extremely fast in professional circles. The story of her manipulative plan, backed by undeniable audio proof, has made her completely toxic to potential employers. She's paying a severe long-term price for an incredibly short-sighted scheme. The final and most satisfying piece of this entire saga happened about 2 months ago. I received a formal letter from a lawyer she'd somehow managed to hire. A demand letter representing a desperate attempt to claim some sort of financial settlement from our 4-year relationship. It was full of complex legal jargon about emotional distress and implied partnerships and shared assets. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who'd been waiting for exactly this, had prepared thoroughly. We didn't just respond with our own letter. We responded with a comprehensive counterclaim. We filed a civil lawsuit against both Jessica and Ryan for conspiracy to commit fraud. Our case was absolutely meticulous and airtight. We had audio recordings of them planning to use my income supporting him financially. We had detailed financial records showing money from our joint account being spent on luxury items for him. We had Ryan's text messages demanding I send Jessica money. We even had a sworn affidavit from their former landlord about the nature of their tenancy and his conversations with them about rent payments. The lawsuit wasn't about winning money from them. It was about making a permanent statement. It was a final, undeniable declaration that I would never be anyone's sufferer. Her lawyer dropped her as a client within a week of receiving our comprehensive filing. Facing a lawsuit they couldn't possibly win, and with no money left to hire another attorney, Jessica was forced to sign a settlement agreement. In it, she formally renounced any and all claims against me, now and forever in the future. She also had to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement, legally preventing her from ever speaking or writing about me or our relationship again publicly. My smear campaign insurance was now ironclad and legally binding permanently. I walk away from this entire situation with absolutely everything intact. My finances are completely secure. My career is thriving better than ever. My new apartment feels like a real home for the first time. I've learned a valuable, if painful, lesson about trust and the critical importance of verifying data, even in your personal life relationships. The London job was, of course, complete fabrication from start to finish. A strategic maneuver designed specifically to force her hand and reveal her true intentions. I never intended to leave this city. Why would I? I had front row seats to the most satisfying system collapse I've ever witnessed in my professional or personal life. They thought they were incredibly clever and sophisticated. They saw me as stable, predictable, and easily exploitable for their benefit. They failed to understand that the most stable systems are often the most complex underneath, and the quietest parts are always the ones that control everything else. They wanted to play a game of chess, but they were playing against a grandmaster who'd already analyzed every possible move they could make 10 steps ahead. They didn't just lose this game. They were systematically dismantled piece by piece. And my life is significantly quieter, cleaner, and infinitely better for their absence. The storm is completely over now. The silence that remains is genuine peace at last.